Some men get midlife crises. Others get Marta's oatmeal and a cold shoulder every morning at 7:15 sharp. I'm Tom Halstead, 45, finance manager at Henderson & Associates, and apparently the world's most oblivious husband. At least, that's what I thought until 3 weeks ago, when my perfect suburban life went straight to hell. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel, so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm going on a girls' retreat, Marta announced over her organic steel-cut oats, not bothering to look up from her phone. Victoria's organizing it. Spa treatments, wine tastings, the whole thing. Victoria, my wife's sister, the Instagram influencer who thinks a hard day's work involves choosing the right filter for her latte art. I should have known right then that something stank worse than the protein smoothie she was sipping. When? I asked, stirring my coffee and trying to sound interested in my wife's first vacation request in 3 years. This weekend, Mills Lake. Don't expect to reach me till I'm back Sunday night. Her tone was ice-cold, final. No discussion, no asking if I had plans, no consideration that maybe her husband of 22 years might want some input. Mills Lake? That's expensive territory. Victoria's treating everyone. She had a good month with her brand partnerships. Marta finally looked up, her green eyes holding that familiar spark of irritation whenever I questioned anything she did. It's a girls' retreat, Tom. None of your business. None of my business. Right. Just like her late-night emergency work meetings were none of my business. Just like the way she'd started locking her phone was none of my business. Just like how she'd stopped wearing her wedding ring to the gym was apparently none of my business either. I'm not stupid. I manage financial portfolios for a living, which means I notice patterns, inconsistencies, things that don't add up. And my wife's behavior over the past 6 months had more red flags than a Soviet parade. The girls she'd be retreating with were a real piece of work. Victoria, the sister who'd never held a real job but somehow afforded designer everything. Chloe Martinez, Marta's gossipy friend from the ad agency who treated other people's marriages like entertainment. And Jess Williams, the enabler who'd cheer on a bank robbery if it came with good wine. After Marta left for work that morning in her silver BMW, I sat in our pristine kitchen, looking around at the life we'd built. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, family photos from happier times. Our kids, Ross and Amelia, were both away at college, leaving us with an empty nest and apparently nothing left to say to each other. My phone buzzed. Danny Morrison, my neighbor and the closest thing I had to a best friend, texting from his garage where he restored classic cars. Beer tonight? Sarah's working late. Can't. Wife's going on a girls' retreat. Need to be supportive husband. Since when does Marta do girls' retreats? Good question. Since when indeed? That afternoon, I was organizing receipts for our tax filing when I found it, crumpled in the bottom of Marta's purse, which she'd left on the kitchen counter. A receipt from Luxury Lake Rentals for a weekend at the Millionaire's Row estate. Premium lakefront property, hot tub, full bar, accommodates up to 8 guests. The booking name made my blood freeze. J. Cole and M. Halstead. J. Cole, Jared Cole, the smarmy creative director at Marta's agency. The guy with the silver Audi who worked out religiously and wore designer jeans to casual Fridays. The guy who'd been texting my wife at 10 p.m. about urgent creative concepts. I stared at that receipt for a full 5 minutes, my hands actually shaking. 22 years of marriage, 2 kids, a mortgage, shared dreams, shared struggles, and she was throwing it all away for a weekend with some gym-obsessed pretty boy who probably couldn't balance his own checkbook. The rational part of my brain said to confront her, demand an explanation, try to save our marriage. But the other part, the part that had been swallowing her coldness and dismissal for months, wanted proof, hard evidence, something she couldn't lie or gaslight her way out of. I downloaded a phone tracking app. Find My Phone, completely legal for married couples sharing an account. If Marta was really going on a girls' retreat, Her phone would be with Victoria and the girls at some spa. If not. Friday evening came. Marta packed her weekend bag with unusual care, including lingerie I hadn't seen her wear in years. She kissed my cheek with the enthusiasm of someone pecking a distant relative and headed out to meet the girls. I waited 30 minutes, then checked the app. Marta's phone was at the Mills Lake estate, not at any spa, not with any girls, at the exact address from the receipt. I sat in my empty house, staring at that little blue dot on my phone screen, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. Maybe it was a girls' spa at the lake house. Maybe Victoria really had rented the place and Jared was just, what? Providing creative consulting for their weekend retreat? Or maybe I was the world's dumbest husband and my wife was cheating on me with a man who probably used more hair product than she did. Either way, I was going to find out. Saturday night, 11 p.m. I parked my Honda Civic a half-mile from the Mills Lake estate, dressed in dark clothes like some suburban spy. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was breaking into a millionaire's compound, wearing khakis and a polo shirt. This is how Dateline episodes start. The estate was gated, but the lakeside was accessible through a small public park. I'd kayaked these waters with the kids years ago, back when family weekends meant something. Now I was sneaking through the woods like a discount private investigator, branches catching my shirt, mosquitoes treating me like an all-you-can-eat buffet. The mansion sat on a point jutting into the lake, all glass and modern angles, lit up like a Christmas tree. I could hear laughter and music drifting across the water. So much for a quiet, relaxing spa weekend. I crept closer, using the landscaping as cover. A massive oak tree grew near the back deck, its branches reaching toward a second-floor window. I hadn't climbed a tree since I was 12, but desperate times call for stupid measures. The bark scraped my palms as I hauled myself up, branch by branch, until I had a clear view through the floor-to-ceiling windows. What I saw made my stomach drop to my shoes. Marta was there, all right. Along with Victoria, Chloe, and Jess. But they weren't alone. Jared Cole lounged on a white leather couch, shirtless, a champagne flute in one hand. Another guy I didn't recognize, probably one of Jared's gym buddies, was mixing drinks at the bar. Both women and men were in various states of undress. Silk robes, lingerie, the kind of casual intimacy that comes after the clothes have already come off once. Marta sat on Jared's lap, running her fingers through his perfectly styled hair. She was laughing at something he whispered in her ear, the kind of genuine laughter I hadn't heard from her in years. Victoria was draped over the other guy, while Chloe and Jess cheered them on like some twisted cheerleading squad. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. The camera flash was off, but I managed to capture several clear shots. Marta grinding against Jared, Victoria making out with the stranger. The whole group toasting with champagne, my wife's wedding ring nowhere to be seen. 22 years, 2 kids, a mortgage. Shared dreams and struggles and late-night talks about growing old together. And she was throwing it all away for Prosecco and a man who probably couldn't spell commitment without autocorrect. I was so focused on documenting my wife's betrayal that I didn't notice the branch I was leaning on starting to bend. The crack was loud enough to wake the dead, and I barely managed to grab another branch before plummeting 20 feet to the ground. The sound made everyone inside look toward the window. I pressed myself against the trunk, heart hammering, as Jared walked to the glass and peered out into the darkness. After what felt like an hour, but was probably 30 seconds, he shrugged and returned to my wife. Getting down was harder than climbing up. I slipped twice, scraping my arms and tearing my shirt. By the time I reached the ground, I was bleeding from a dozen small cuts and my knees were shaking. But I had the evidence. Clear, undeniable proof of what my perfect suburban wife really did on her girls' weekends. I was about to head back to my car when I spotted something that made me smile for the first time in hours. Jared's silver Audi was parked in the circular driveway, and like the arrogant prick he was, he'd left the keys in a decorative flower pot by the front door. Probably figured the gated community was security enough. Wrong. I pocketed the keys and took a long look at his precious car. Tomorrow, Jared Cole was going to learn that actions have consequences, and my wife was going to discover that her boring, predictable husband had a few surprises of his own. As I walked back through the woods, my phone buzzed with a text from Marta. "Having wonderful time with the girls. Don't wait up tomorrow night. We might extend the retreat." I typed back, "Take all the time you need, honey. Enjoy your retreat." And I meant every word, because while she was playing house with her boy toy, I was planning something that would make her regret every lie, every cold shoulder, every moment she'd made me feel like I wasn't enough. They wanted to play games? Perfect. I'd show them the rules. Sunday morning, 5 a.m. I returned to the estate armed with tools from Danny's garage and a heart full of righteous fury. The security guard was probably asleep, and the party animals inside were definitely unconscious after their night of champagne and adultery. Jared's Audi sat in the driveway like a silver monument to his arrogance. I'd always hated that car, the way he'd rev the engine in the office parking lot, making sure everyone noticed his expensive toy. Today, that car was going to get the attention it deserved. First, I removed all 4 tires. Not slashed. I'm not a vandal. Just loosened the lug nuts and rolled them into the lake. Then I opened the hood and disconnected the battery. For the finishing touch, I had 2 pounds of raw shrimp from the grocery store. Into the air vents they went, along with a note, "From your biggest fan." But the masterpiece was the hood. Using bright red spray paint, I wrote "Homewrecker" in letters big enough to be seen from space. Below that, "Ask me about Marta Halstead." I was admiring my handiwork when I heard footsteps on gravel. The security guard, flashlight in hand, was making his rounds. I dropped behind the car as his beam swept over the driveway. "What the hell?" he muttered, seeing the graffiti. I held my breath as he walked around the car, probably wondering if he should wake the guests or call the police first. That's when I made my move, sprinting for the tree line like a middle-aged Olympic athlete. Branches whipped my face and roots tried to trip me, but I made it to the woods without being caught. Good thing I skipped leg day for a decade. All that stored energy had to be useful for something. Back home, I uploaded the photos from last night to my computer and created an anonymous Instagram account. Lake House Lies. The username was perfect. Subtle enough to avoid immediate detection. Obvious enough that anyone who mattered would get the message. I scheduled the posts to go live at noon, when the maximum number of people would be scrolling their feeds. The first photo showed Marta on Jared's lap, clearly identifiable, with the caption, "Girls retreat or couples getaway, you decide." I tagged Victoria's ex-husband, who'd been paying alimony for 3 years. I tagged Jared's wife, who apparently existed but was conveniently absent from the weekend festivities. And I tagged Jake Morrison, Marta's boss at the agency, who had a strict policy about workplace relationships. At noon exactly, I hit publish and watched my marriage explode in real time. Marta came home Sunday evening with a glow that had nothing to do with spa treatments. She was humming, actually humming, as she unpacked her weekend bag. I watched from the kitchen doorway, noting the new lingerie that was definitely not there when she left. "How was the retreat?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Wonderful. So relaxing. The girls and I really bonded." She didn't even have the decency to look guilty. "Victoria knows how to plan a weekend." "I'm sure she does. Learn anything new?" "Just that I need more girl time. It's important for women to support each other, you know?" The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Here she was, preaching about female solidarity while she'd spent the weekend betraying every woman in Jared's life, including herself. My phone buzzed. The Instagram posts were gaining traction. 17 likes, 43 comments, and climbing. Victoria's ex-husband had shared it to his story with the caption, "Interesting use of my alimony money." Jared's wife had commented with a string of fire emojis and the word divorce. "Marta," I said, pulling up the Instagram account on my phone. "I think you should see this." The color drained from her face as she stared at the photos. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This isn't what it looks like," she stammered. "Really? Because it looks like my wife grinding on another man while lying to her husband about a girl's retreat. But hey, maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me." "Tom, you don't understand. We were just having fun. It didn't mean anything." "Didn't mean anything?" I laughed, and even I was surprised by how bitter it sounded. 22 years of marriage, and you throw it away for something that doesn't mean anything? That actually makes it worse. She tried to grab my phone, but I pulled it away. The Instagram account now had over 100 followers, and the comments were getting brutal. Someone had identified Jared and tagged his gym, his workplace, even his mother. "Delete it," Marta demanded. "Delete it right now." "I can't. It's not my account. Someone else must have been at the lake house. Maybe one of your girls' retreat friends wanted to share the memories." The lie came so easily I almost believed it myself. But Marta's face told me she wasn't buying it. "You followed us. You spied on us like some creepy stalker." I followed my wife's phone to make sure she was safe. Imagine my surprise when I found her playing house with another man. The doorbell rang. We both froze, staring at each other across the kitchen island that had witnessed 1,000 mundane conversations about bills and schedules and weekend plans. Now, it felt like a battle line. I opened the door to find Jared Cole standing on my porch, his perfect hair disheveled, his designer clothes wrinkled. He looked like he'd driven straight from the lake house, probably in a rental car since his Audi was currently decorating the estate driveway like modern art. "You son of a bitch," he snarled, pushing past me into my own house. "You destroyed my car." "Your car? I haven't been near your car. I've been home all weekend, being a supportive husband while my wife enjoyed her girls' retreat." "Don't play dumb with me. I know it was you." I picked up the baseball bat I kept by the front door, a leftover from my softball league days. "You're in my house, threatening me, after spending the weekend screwing my wife. I'd choose your next words very carefully." Jared looked at the bat, then at me, probably calculating whether a middle-aged finance manager was actually dangerous. Smart money said no, but the look in my eyes must have suggested otherwise. "This isn't over," he said, backing toward the door. "You're right," I replied, stepping closer. "It's just getting started." He fled to his rental car as neighbors started gathering on their porches, drawn by the shouting. Mrs. Bell from next door had her phone out, probably recording everything for the neighborhood Facebook group. I waved at them cheerfully, still holding the bat. "Evening, folks. Beautiful night, isn't it?" Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove straight to my lawyer's office. Patricia Chen had handled our will and house purchase, but today I needed her expertise in a different area entirely. "I want a divorce," I told her, sliding a folder across her desk. "And I want to make sure I'm protected financially." Patricia flipped through the photos, the bank statements showing unusual charges, the evidence I'd compiled over the past 48 hours. Her expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught a slight shake of her head. "This is pretty damning, Tom. In a no-fault state like ours, adultery doesn't affect property division, but it certainly helps with the narrative. How do you want to proceed?" "I want to drain our joint accounts. Legally. I want to move out before she can claim I abandoned the marriage. And I want to make sure she understands that actions have consequences. The first two I can help you with. The third sounds like you're planning something that might get you in trouble." "Nothing illegal, just making sure the truth gets the attention it deserves." By noon, I'd transferred half of our joint savings to a new account in my name only. Completely legal, since both names were on the original account. I also withdrew cash for a security deposit on a furnished apartment across town. If Marta wanted to play house with Jared, she could do it without my financial support. But first, I had a few more moves to make. I hired a food truck, Danny's Shrimp Shack, owned by my neighbor's cousin, to park outside Marta's office building during lunch hour. The banner read, "Free shrimp cocktails, courtesy of Marta's weekend getaway." I'd provided photos from the lake house as promotional materials, which Danny's cousin was happy to display on poster boards around the truck. The office workers loved it. Free food always draws a crowd, and the photos sparked exactly the kind of gossip I'd hoped for. By 2 p.m., everyone at Henderson Creative knew about Marta's retreat, and the story was spreading through their professional network like wildfire. Jared's gym got similar treatment. I'd created a fake Yelp review account and posted the lake house photos with a review of their couples training sessions. The gym owner called Jared within hours, demanding an explanation for why his facility was being associated with adultery and public humiliation. Victoria's Instagram empire crumbled next. I'd identified several of her brand partners from her posts and sent them the lake house photos with a polite note about their spokesperson's weekend activities. 3 companies dropped her by end of business Monday, citing brand image concerns. Chloe and Jess got their own special treatment. I created a Facebook event called Girls Retreat Planning Committee and invited everyone in their social circles, using the lake house photos as the event banner. The description read, "Learn how to plan the perfect girls' weekend," featuring expert tips from our recent Mills Lake retreat attendees. The comments section was brutal. Friends, co-workers, even family members were asking pointed questions about the retreat activities. Both women deactivated their social media accounts by Tuesday morning. But Jared wasn't finished with me. Tuesday evening, as I was loading boxes into my rental truck, he appeared in my driveway like a bad rash. This time he'd brought backup, 2 guys from his gym who looked like they ate protein powder for breakfast and steroids for lunch. "Time to pay for what you did to my car," Jared announced, cracking his knuckles dramatically. I set down the box I was carrying and looked at the 3 of them. Middle-aged finance manager versus 3 gym rats. The smart play was to back down, apologize, maybe offer to pay for his car repairs. Instead, I started laughing. "You brought muscle to threaten a guy loading moving boxes? What's next, Jared? You gonna beat up my accountant for doing my taxes wrong?" "This is funny to you?" one of the gym bros asked, stepping closer. "Hilarious. 3 grown men ganging up on one guy because their friend can't handle the consequences of sleeping with someone else's wife. You should charge admission." That's when Jared made his mistake. He grabbed the box from my hands and threw it on the ground, scattering my belongings across the driveway. Photo albums, books, personal items that represented 22 years of life, treated like garbage. Something snapped inside me. I'd been calm, calculating, methodical in my revenge, but watching him destroy my memories triggered something primal and furious. I tackled him before his gym buddies could react, driving him backward into Mrs. Bell's rose bushes. We rolled around in the dirt and thorns, throwing wild punches like teenagers. I wasn't stronger or faster, but I was angrier, and anger is a hell of a motivator. When his friends finally pulled me off him, Jared was bleeding from a dozen thorn scratches. His designer shirt was shredded, and his perfect hair looked like he'd stuck his finger in an electrical socket. "You're crazy," he gasped, trying to salvage his appearance. "I'm just getting started," I replied, brushing dirt off my clothes. "You want to keep playing games, or are you ready to admit you made a mistake?" The gym bros were looking uncertain now. This wasn't the easy intimidation they'd signed up for. A crazy, middle-aged guy covered in rose thorn scratches was apparently outside their comfort zone. "Let's go," one of them muttered. "This isn't worth it." As they helped Jared to his feet, I called out, "Hey, Jared, next time you want to threaten someone, maybe don't do it in front of a neighborhood full of security cameras. Mrs. Bell's got the whole thing on video." Mrs. Bell waved from her porch, holding up her phone. "Already posted to the neighborhood Facebook group, Tom. 17 likes and counting." Jared and his backup crew fled like cockroaches when the lights come on. I waved goodbye cheerfully, then continued loading my truck as neighbors gathered to offer support and ask questions. Good for you, Tom, called Mr. Peterson from across the street. That guy had it coming. Need any help moving? Asked Sarah Morrison, Danny's wife. Danny's got a truck if you need it. For the first time in months, I felt like I belonged somewhere. My marriage was over, my house was sold, and my wife was probably planning her next lie. But my neighbors had my back, and sometimes that's enough. Wednesday morning, I signed the lease on my new apartment and officially served Marta with divorce papers. She was waiting in the kitchen when I stopped by to pick up the last of my things, her face puffy from crying, her perfect hair unwashed. Tom, please, can we talk about this? Can we try counseling? 22 years, Marta. You threw away 22 years for a weekend with a guy who uses more hair gel than our daughter. What exactly would we talk about in counseling? It was a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake. But we can fix this. No, we can't. Because you're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. I headed for the door, then turned back for one final word. Oh, and Marta? Next time you plan a girls' retreat, you might want to make sure there are actually girls involved. Just a thought. The divorce papers were just the beginning. I had one more move planned, something that would ensure Jared Cole never forgot the name Tom Halstead, something that would make both of them understand that actions have consequences and some mistakes can't be undone. The final showdown was coming, and this time I was going to make sure everyone was watching. Thursday night, 11 p.m. I was in my new apartment, organizing my books and trying to convince myself that starting over at 45 wasn't the end of the world, when my security app chimed. Someone was breaking into my old house. The cameras I'd installed before moving out showed a figure in dark clothes jimmying the back door. Even in the grainy night vision, I recognized Jared's perfectly sculpted silhouette. The idiot was breaking and entering, probably looking for evidence that I'd sabotaged his car or some way to get revenge for his public humiliation. I could have called the police. Should have called the police. Instead, I grabbed my keys and drove back to the house that used to be my home, where my cheating wife was probably sound asleep while her boyfriend burgled the place. I parked down the street and crept around to the backyard, using the spare key I'd forgotten to turn over to Marta. The house was dark except for a flashlight beam moving through the living room. Jared was ransacking my former home office, probably looking for the computer I'd used to create the Instagram account. Too bad for him. I'd taken that computer to my new place. I crept upstairs to the bedroom where Marta was sleeping. Time to wake up the whole neighborhood for the grand finale. Marta, I whispered, shaking her shoulder. Wake up. Your boyfriend's downstairs robbing us. She jerked awake, confused and disoriented. Tom, what are you doing here? Protecting my investment. Call the police. Tell them there's an intruder in the house. What intruder? What are you talking about? A crash from downstairs answered her question. Jared had apparently knocked over a lamp while searching for evidence that didn't exist. That intruder, I said, unless you invited him over for a midnight rendezvous in our marital bed, which, given recent events, wouldn't surprise me. Marta grabbed her phone and dialed 911 while I headed downstairs to confront the man who'd destroyed my marriage. I found him in the kitchen, rifling through drawers like a common burglar. Looking for something specific or just browsing? I asked, flipping on the lights. Jared spun around, flashlight in one hand, kitchen knife in the other. His face was a mask of rage and desperation, his perfect hair disheveled, his designer clothes wrinkled and dirty. You ruined my life, he snarled. My wife divorced me. I lost my job. My gym membership got canceled. All because you couldn't handle losing your frigid wife to a better man. Better man? I laughed. You're standing in my kitchen at midnight holding a knife after breaking into my house. If you're the better man, the bar is set pretty low. She never loved you. She told me all about your pathetic marriage, how bored she was, how much she regretted wasting her life with a boring accountant. Finance manager, I corrected. And if I'm so boring, why are you here? Why not just move on with your superior life? That's when I heard the sirens in the distance getting closer. Marta had actually called the police, probably figuring she could play the victim and blame everything on her crazy ex-husband. Time's up, Jared. Police are coming. You can leave now and maybe avoid jail time, or you can stay and explain to the officers why you're holding a knife in someone else's kitchen. He looked toward the front door, calculating his chances of escape, but I wasn't done with him yet. This was my moment, my chance to say everything I'd been thinking for the past week. You want to know the funny thing about all this? I continued, stepping closer despite the knife. You didn't win anything. You got a woman who lies to her husband, cheats on her marriage, and destroys her family for a weekend of cheap thrills. Congratulations, Jared. You won a cheater. Hope she doesn't cheat on you, too. The sirens were getting louder. Red and blue lights flashed through the front windows. She's not like that, Jared protested, but his voice lacked conviction. She's exactly like that. She lied to me for months, planned an elaborate deception, and threw away 22 years of marriage for a few nights with you. What makes you think you're special? What makes you think she won't do the same thing to you when someone better comes along? The front door burst open as police officers entered with weapons drawn. Drop the knife! Get on the ground! Jared looked around wildly, finally understanding that he was trapped. He dropped the knife and raised his hands as officers surrounded him. He broke in! Marta shouted from the stairs, pointing at Jared. I don't know why he's here. I almost felt sorry for him then. Almost. Here was a man who'd lost everything for a woman who was already throwing him under the bus to save herself. Officers, I said calmly. I'm Tom Halstead. This is my house, or was until recently. This man has been harassing me and my wife since we discovered their affair. I have video evidence of the break-in, photos of their relationship, and witness statements from neighbors about his previous threats. As they cuffed Jared and read him his rights, I pulled out my phone and showed the officers the security footage, the Instagram photos, the documentation I'd been collecting for a week. The case was airtight. You set me up, Jared accused as they led him toward the door. This was all planned. No, Jared. You set yourself up when you decided to sleep with another man's wife. I just documented the consequences. The police took statements from both Marta and me, though we gave very different versions of events. She tried to paint herself as an innocent victim caught between two obsessed men. I stuck to the facts. Adultery, lies, harassment, and now breaking and entering. As the officers prepared to leave with Jared in custody, I made my final move. Officer Martinez, I called out. You might want to check the neighborhood Facebook group and Instagram. This incident is part of a larger pattern of harassment and stalking. The community has been documenting everything. Within minutes, half the neighborhood had gathered on the front lawn, drawn by the police lights and the promise of drama. Mrs. Bell was live streaming on Facebook, providing color commentary like a suburban sports announcer. Mr. Peterson had brought folding chairs for himself and his wife. Tom, called Sarah Morrison. We saw the whole thing on the security cameras. That creep was prowling around for 20 minutes before he broke in. Got it all recorded, added Mrs. Bell, waving her phone. Posted it to the group chat. 47 shares already. Marta looked around at our neighbors, people we'd barbecued with, shared holidays with, watched each other's kids grow up. They were all staring at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. The woman who'd cheated on the nice man who helped with their taxes and loaned them his ladder. This is insane, she muttered. This whole neighborhood has lost their minds. No, Marta, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The neighborhood finally sees you clearly. They see a woman who lied to her husband, destroyed her marriage, and brought a criminal into their community. They see someone who chose a weekend of selfish pleasure over 22 years of commitment and family. The crowd murmured agreement. Someone in the back called out, Good for you, Tom. Another voice added, She never deserved you anyway. As the police car pulled away with Jared in the back seat, I turned to address my soon-to-be ex-wife one final time. You lost everything for a weekend at Mills Lake, Marta. Your marriage, your reputation, your family, your standing in this community. And for what? A man who just got arrested for breaking into your house. I hope the Prosecco was worth it. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. What could she say? That it was all a misunderstanding? That she was the real victim here? The evidence was overwhelming. The community had turned against her, and her boyfriend was facing criminal charges. Instead, she turned and walked back into the house, leaving me standing on the lawn with my neighbors, the people who'd supported me through the worst week of my life. "Tom," said Danny Morrison, putting a hand on my shoulder, "you handled this better than most men would have. You got justice without getting your hands too dirty." "Justice," I repeated, tasting the word. "Yeah, I guess I did." As the crowd dispersed and the excitement died down, I stood alone in the driveway of the house I'd called home for 15 years. Tomorrow, the divorce would proceed. Marta would have to explain to our kids why their family was broken. Jared would face criminal charges and probably jail time. And me? I'd start over, older but wiser, with the knowledge that I'd stood up for myself when it mattered. I'd proven that the boring, predictable husband had some surprises left in him after all. My phone buzzed with a text from Ross, our son. "Dad, saw the Facebook posts. Are you okay? Do you need anything?" I typed back, "I'm fine, son. Better than I've been in months. Looking forward to telling you the whole story when you're home for break." Another text, this one from Amelia. "Mom called crying, but she wouldn't explain what happened. The neighbors are posting crazy stuff online. What's going on? Your mother made some poor choices, honey. We'll talk soon. I love you." "Love you too, Dad. Whatever happened, I'm on your side." That was worth more than any revenge, any public humiliation, any satisfaction from seeing Jared in handcuffs. My kids still loved me, my neighbors respected me, and I'd proven to myself that I wasn't the pushover everyone thought I was. I got in my car and drove back to my new apartment, where I had books to unpack and a life to rebuild. Behind me, the house stood dark and empty except for one upstairs light, where Marta was probably planning her next move, her next lie, her next attempt to play the victim. But that was her problem now. I was done being her supporting actor in the drama of her selfish choices. From now on, I was writing my own story, and it was going to have a much better ending. Next time she plans a girls' retreat, she'll think twice. Or maybe she'll just pick better friends. Either way, I'll be here, enjoying my shrimp cocktail and watching her learn that actions have consequences.